In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where 1,000 civilizations have risen and fallen, there exists a universal truth that even the most hardened killers whisper in hushed tones: never hunt what you cannot understand. The Kethvar Syndicate had ruled the assassination trade for 3 millennia. Their operatives were legends, beings who could slip through dimensional barriers, manipulate time flows, and kill with a thought. They had ended wars, toppled empires, and made entire species extinct with surgical precision. No target had ever escaped them. No contract had ever gone unfulfilled. Until the day they received a seemingly simple job: eliminate a small group of beings from an unremarkable blue planet on the galaxy's outer rim. A planet the galactic community had dismissed as a death world, one of those rare, savage places where life somehow thrived despite impossible odds. The Syndicate's best laughed at the assignment. How difficult could it be to kill creatures that had barely mastered interstellar travel? They would soon discover that some prey doesn't just fight back, it hunts the hunters. And, when Deathworlders decide to go to war, even the galaxy's most feared assassins learn the meaning of terror. This is the story of humanity's first contact with the galactic underworld, and why the most dangerous predators in the universe now refuse contracts involving a single, terrifying word: human. The obsidian spires of Nexus Prime pierced through layers of artificial atmosphere, their surfaces gleaming with the cold light of distant stars. Deep within the central tower, in a chamber that existed partially outside normal spacetime, the Council of Shadows convened for what would become their most fateful meeting. Zektar Voss, the Syndicate's prime executor, materialized from the quantum foam with the fluid grace that had made him legend. His form was humanoid but distinctly alien: elongated limbs that could phase through matter, skin that shifted between visible light spectrums, and eyes that saw across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Around the circular table, 5 other figures emerged from their own pocket realities. Lysandra, the temporal assassin, appeared as a shimmering outline that seemed to exist in several moments at once. Her specialty was killing targets before they were born, unraveling their timeline threads with surgical precision. Beside her, Kaarmoth the Voidwalker sat in perfect stillness, his massive frame draped in shadows that actively consumed light. His method was simple: he would step into the space between atoms and crush his victims from within their own molecular structure. The Psion twins, Veltar and Veldaz, shared a single consciousness spread across 2 bodies. Their mental abilities could rewrite a being's thoughts, making them believe they had never existed or driving them to madness with impossible memories. Finally, there was Nyxera, the Plague Weaver, whose delicate appearance masked her ability to craft diseases so specific they could target individual genetic sequences. Together, they had ended civilizations. "The client transmits from the outer reaches," Zektar announced, his voice carrying harmonics that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the brain. "A consortium of mining corporations. Standard territorial dispute." The holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of a spiral galaxy's outer arm. One system pulsed with a soft blue light: Sol, according to the data streams flowing alongside the image. "Third planet from the star," Zektar continued. "Designation: Earth. Classification: Class 12 Deathworld. Indigenous species has achieved limited interstellar capability. Current population: approximately 8 billion. Kaarmoth's laugh was like the sound of tearing metal. 8 billion primitives on a death world? This is barely worth our time. What could they possibly have done to warrant our attention?" The display shifted, showing mining survey reports and territorial claims. The humans have established colonies on 17 worlds within a 50 light-year radius. All contain rare element deposits. The consortium wants clear territorial rights without complications. Nyxera leaned forward, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with interest. "Define complications." "Complete elimination of the species," Zektar replied matter-of-factly. "Standard extinction protocol." The client wants no survivors who might later contest territorial claims or seek revenge. The Psion twins spoke in unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. "Show us the target profiles." The hologram changed again, displaying humans in various settings: scientists working on orbital stations, families in colony settlements, military personnel manning defensive installations. The images were unremarkable by galactic standards. The beings were bipedal, carbon-based, with no apparent natural weapons or extraordinary abilities. Deathworld adaptation, LYSS Andra observed, studying the data streams. Enhanced durability, rapid healing, resistance to environmental hazards. Nothing we haven't encountered before. Veltar nodded. Their technology is crude but functional. Chemical rockets, primitive energy weapons, basic force fields. We've eliminated civilizations with far more advanced capabilities. Zektar gestured, and detailed biological scans appeared. Standard Deathworld physiology. Dense bone structure, redundant organ systems, enhanced immune responses. They seem to have evolved from persistence hunters. They track prey across vast distances until it collapses from exhaustion. Persistence hunters, Karmoth mused. How charmingly primitive. The display showed human settlements across multiple worlds. Each colony was small but efficiently organized, with defensive positions that suggested a species accustomed to conflict. Military installations were scattered throughout each system, often hidden within asteroid fields or on airless moons. They've spread quickly for such a young species, Nixera noted. Only achieved interstellar flight 200 of their years ago, yet they're already establishing permanent colonies. Deathworld species often expand rapidly once they escape their birth planets, Zektar explained. They're used to hostile environments. To them, the vacuum of space is just another obstacle to overcome. LYSS Andra studied the temporal signatures around the Sol system. Their development path is interesting. They achieved nuclear fission before computer miniaturization, spaceflight before renewable energy, and interstellar travel before mastering their own genetics. Usually, we see more linear progression. Their warriors, the Psion twins, observed simultaneously. Every advancement seems to have military applications. They've weaponized everything from split atoms to bacterial cultures. The hologram displayed human military encounters with other species. Most had been minor skirmishes, pirates, raiders, the occasional territorial dispute with neighboring civilizations. In each case, human forces had performed adequately but not exceptionally. Their combat record suggests competence but nothing extraordinary, Karmoth observed. They rely heavily on kinetic weapons and explosive ordnance. Crude but effective against lightly armored opponents. Zektar manipulated the display, showing detailed scans of human physiology and psychology. Standard Deathworld mental conditioning. High stress tolerance, rapid adaptation to threatening situations, strong pack loyalty. They form tight social bonds and will fight desperately to protect group members. Which makes them predictable, Nixera said with satisfaction. Threaten their families and they'll abandon tactical thinking for emotional response. Classic Deathworld weakness. The data continued to flow: economic structures, political systems, cultural practices. Everything pointed to a species that had barely begun to understand its place in the galaxy. They had contacted only a few neighboring civilizations, established limited trade relationships, and shown no awareness of the vast criminal networks that operated in the galactic shadows. Time frame? LYSS Andra asked. 6 standard months, Zektar replied. The client wants to begin mining operations before the next galactic fiscal period. Veldaz leaned back in his chair. Simple enough. We've eliminated larger populations in shorter timeframes. Individual assignments? Karmoth inquired. Zektar gestured, and the hologram split into 5 sections, each showing different human colonies. Karmoth, you'll handle their military command structure. Eliminate key personnel to create chaos in their defensive systems. LYSS Andra, target their top scientists and engineers, prevent them from developing new technologies that might pose unexpected challenges. The display showed detailed profiles of human leaders, scientists, and military commanders. Each target was annotated with behavioral patterns, known associates, and security protocols. Nixera, you'll focus on their core worlds. Design pathogens that exploit their biological weaknesses. Something that spreads quickly but remains undetected until it's too late. The Plague Weaver's markings pulsed with anticipation as data streams showed human biological vulnerabilities. The twins will handle psychological warfare. Break their morale, turn their social structures against each other. Make them too busy fighting among themselves to mount coordinated resistance. Veltar and Veldaz nodded in unison. Their pack loyalty makes them vulnerable to manipulation. We can use their protective instincts against them.
And you? Kr Moth asked.
I'll eliminate their political leadership, Zektar replied.
Cut off the head, scatter the body.
Without central coordination, their response will be fragmented and ineffective. The hologram displayed human government buildings, diplomatic facilities, and political gathering places. Each location was analyzed for security measures, escape routes, and potential collateral damage.
Standard protocol, LYSS Andra confirmed. We've used this approach successfully on dozens of species. The fee? Nixera inquired. 50 million galactic credits.
Plus territorial rights to 3 uninhabited systems for our own operations. The sum was substantial but not extraordinary. The syndicate had earned similar amounts for single high-value eliminations. An entire species, even one numbering in the billions, was simply a matter of scale rather than difficulty.
When do we begin? The twins asked.
Zektar stood, his form already beginning to phase back toward his dimensional pocket.
Immediately. We'll establish observation posts around their primary systems, study their patterns, identify optimal strike points. This should be concluded within the month.
One by one, the other assassins began to fade from normal space.
But, Kr Moth hesitated, studying the human images that still flickered in the hologram. Something concerns you? Zektar asked. Kr Moth pointed to one image, a group of human soldiers defending a colony against raiders.
They were outnumbered, outgunned, but still fighting with desperate ferocity.
Look at their eyes.
The image zoomed in, focusing on the humans' faces. Their expression showed fear, exhaustion, pain, but underneath it all was something else. Something that burned with cold intensity.
What am I looking at? Zektar demanded.
I've seen that look before, Kr Moth said slowly.
In the eyes of cornered predators.
The moment they decide they have nothing left to lose. You're overanalyzing, Zektar dismissed. They're primitives from a backwater world. Once we begin systematic elimination of their leadership and infrastructure, they'll collapse like all the others.
Kr Moth nodded reluctantly and phased out of normal space.
But something about those human eyes continued to trouble him. In his long career as an assassin, he had learned to trust his instincts.
And, right now, those instincts were whispering warnings he couldn't quite understand. The chamber fell empty, its quantum field cycling back to standby mode.
Across the galaxy, 5 of the most dangerous killers ever to exist began preparing for what they assumed would be routine genocide. None of them suspected they were about to encounter something unprecedented in their 3 millennia of operation, prey that would refuse to die quietly.
The contract had been accepted. The hunt was about to begin.
But, in the cold depths of space, another kind of hunter was already watching the Watchers. The monitoring station orbiting Earth's second moon was invisible to every scanning technology known to galactic civilization. Zektar had positioned it in a quantum blind spot, existing in the space between dimensions where even the most sophisticated sensors registered only empty void. From this vantage point, he could observe human activities across the entire Sol system while remaining completely undetected. For 3 weeks, the Syndicate had studied their targets with clinical precision. Human patrol routes were mapped down to the second. Communication frequencies were monitored and decoded. Personal schedules of key leaders were documented in exhaustive detail.
Everything proceeded according to standard protocol.
The humans remained oblivious to their Watchers. Initial strike commences in 6 hours, Zektar transmitted to his team across secured quantum channels.
All operatives confirm readiness.
Temporal insertion points established, LYSS Andra responded from her position near Jupiter's moons.
I've identified optimal timeline fractures around 3 key scientific facilities. Their top researchers will cease to exist before they're born.
Kr Moth's signal originated from the asteroid belt where human military command maintained its primary headquarters.
Void corridors mapped through their defensive grids.
I can reach their command staff before their security systems even register an intrusion. The Psion twins reported from Earth's orbit.
Psychological profiles complete. We've identified critical stress points in their social structure.
Mass hysteria can be triggered within hours once we begin targeted mental manipulation. Nixera confirmed from Luna Base, where human colonists maintained a significant research facility.
Pathogen design finalized.
Delivery systems are in place. The contagion will spread through their air recycling systems before symptoms manifest.
Everything was proceeding perfectly.
Zektar materialized aboard the human diplomatic station orbiting Mars. The facility housed the central government's primary representatives to other species, making it an ideal target for political decapitation. He phased through the outer hull, his form adjusted to exist just outside normal matter interaction. The station's interior was cramped by galactic standards but efficiently designed.
Humans moved through corridors with purposeful haste, their faces showing the constant tension of a species still uncomfortable with life in space.
Security protocols were adequate but primitive: motion sensors, thermal imaging, simple electromagnetic barriers. None of them could detect a being existing in quantum superposition. Zektar located his primary target in the station's command center. Ambassador Sarah Chen was reviewing diplomatic correspondence from the Altarian Trade Federation, unaware that her death had been purchased for 50 million credits. She was a middle-aged human female with graying hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing in her environment. Zektar studied her for several minutes, noting her behavior patterns and physical positioning. She moved efficiently but showed signs of chronic fatigue typical for humans operating in high-stress environments. Her security detail consisted of 4 guards stationed around the command center's perimeter, their attention focused on potential external threats.
The assassination would be trivial.
Zektar could phase his hand directly into her brain, disrupting neural activity instantly. Death would appear natural: a sudden stroke or aneurysm. By the time medical personnel arrived, he would be long gone, leaving no evidence of foul play. He moved closer, preparing to solidify his hand within her cranial cavity. Chen's head snapped up, her eyes scanning the room with sudden alertness.
Zektar froze. No human should be able to detect his presence while phased.
Their senses operated on entirely mundane frequencies. Yet something had clearly triggered her attention. "Johnson," Chen called to her chief of security.
"Run a level 3 scan of the command center."
The security chief looked confused.
"Ma'am? Is there a specific threat?"
"Something feels wrong," Chen replied, her gaze continuing to sweep the room.
"Call it intuition."
Zektar remained motionless as the humans activated their scanning equipment. Primitive electromagnetic sensors swept the area, followed by thermal imaging and particle detectors. None of them could possibly reveal his presence, yet Chen continued to act like a predator sensing hidden danger.
"Scans are negative," Ambassador Johnson reported. "No anomalous readings."
Chen nodded slowly but her posture remained tense.
"Maintain elevated alert status. Something's not right here."
Zektar decided to proceed despite her obvious unease.
Human intuition was meaningless against dimensional phasing technology.
He moved to within arm's reach of his target and began to solidify his hand inside her skull. Chen dove sideways an instant before his fingers materialized in her brain.
The motion was impossible. No sentient being could react to an attack they couldn't perceive, from a direction they couldn't predict, at a speed they couldn't track. Yet somehow this primitive human had moved at exactly the right moment to avoid instant death.
Alarms began blaring as Chen's security team reacted to her sudden motion.
"Possible assassination attempt," Johnson shouted into his communication device. "Lock down all sections."
Zektar phased back to full immateriality, his mind racing. The human had somehow detected his attack before it began. Such sensitivity was theoretically possible but had never been documented in any species the Syndicate had encountered. "Unknown hostile in command center," Chen announced with remarkable calm for someone who had just avoided death by microseconds. "Assume cloaking or phasing capabilities. Initiate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 turned out to be something Zektar had not anticipated. The humans began flooding the command center with various energy frequencies: radio waves, microwaves, gamma radiation, even simple sonic pulses. Most of the energy passed harmlessly through his phased form, but some of the quantum frequencies created interference patterns that made maintaining dimensional displacement more difficult.
Quantum disruption fields active, Johnson reported.
If anything's hiding in phase space, it won't be able to maintain position much longer.
Zektar felt his form beginning to destabilize as the human countermeasures interfered with his dimensional anchor points.
Whoever had designed these protocols understood far more about advanced physics than their technological level should have allowed.
He was forced to retreat, phasing through the station's hull and back into open space.
The first assassination attempt by the galaxy's most feared killers had been thwarted by primitive humans using improvised countermeasures.
Across the system, similar scenes were playing out.
KR Moth had reached the military command center without difficulty, his massive form walking between atoms to approach Admiral Marcus Thompson in his private office. The human was reviewing tactical reports, apparently unaware of impending death.
KR Moth stepped into normal space directly behind Thompson's chair, his hands reaching out to crush the Admiral's spine.
Thompson spun around before KR Moth fully materialized, a crude but effective plasma pistol already in his hand.
The weapon discharged directly into KR Moth's torso before the assassin could phase back to safety.
Primitive human plasma technology shouldn't have been capable of harming a being existing between dimensional states, yet the blast tore through KR Moth's form like he was made of ordinary matter.
Security alert!
Thompson shouted as KR Moth collapsed, his dimensional stability failing.
Hostile entity in command section. Implementing containment procedures.
The humans had somehow developed weapons that could affect phased targets. As KR Moth struggled to maintain corporeal form, human soldiers flooded the area carrying similar plasma weapons. Their tactics suggested they had trained specifically for enemies with dimensional manipulation abilities. KR Moth managed to phase partially out of normal space and escape, but not before suffering significant damage to his quantum matrix. For the first time in his 3,000-year career, he had been wounded by his intended prey.
Lyssandra's mission fared no better.
She had inserted herself into the timeline 30 years before her targets were born, planning to eliminate their grandparents and prevent their existence entirely. But, the moment she began making alterations to the past, human temporal sensors detected the chronological disturbances. Dr. Elizabeth Hawking, one of humanity's leading theoretical physicists, had been monitoring temporal fluctuations around Earth as part of a research project into faster-than-light communication.
When Lyssandra's manipulations created ripples in the time stream, Hawking's equipment registered the anomalies immediately.
Artificial temporal displacement detected, Hawking announced to her team.
Someone is attempting to alter our timeline.
The humans had developed countermeasures for temporal manipulation. Quantum anchors began activating throughout the Sol system, creating stabilized time fields that prevented further historical alterations. Lysandra found herself trapped in a causality loop, unable to return to her own timeline or complete her mission. The Psion twins encountered their own unexpected obstacles when they attempted to project mass hysteria into the human population. Their psychic probes found minds that were naturally resistant to mental manipulation, protected by what appeared to be deliberate mental conditioning. The targets have been trained to resist psychic intrusion, Veltar reported with growing frustration. Their thoughts are organized in defensive patterns.
Impossible, Velthos replied.
No species develops natural psi resistance without centuries of exposure to psychic predators.
Yet the evidence was undeniable. Human minds contained complex mental barriers that deflected or absorbed psychic attacks. When the twins attempted to implant false memories or induce panic responses, their efforts were neutralized by automatic psychological defenses. Worse, some humans seemed capable of detecting psychic intrusion. Military personnel and government officials began reporting hostile mental contact to their superiors, leading to immediate implementation of additional mental shielding protocols. Only Nyxera initially appeared successful.
Her carefully designed pathogen began spreading through Luna Base's life support systems exactly as planned. The engineered virus was undetectable by human medical technology and should have killed the entire population within days. But humans, it seemed, had been dealing with biological warfare far longer than the Syndicate realized.
Anomalous illness patterns detected in Sectors 7 through 12, Dr. James Rivera announced during the daily medical briefing. Symptoms don't match any known pathogens. Within hours, Luna Base was under complete quarantine. Medical teams began analyzing the unknown disease with an efficiency that suggested extensive prior experience with biological attacks. They isolated the pathogen, identified its artificial nature, and began developing countermeasures. "This is engineered," Dr. Rivera reported to the base commander. "Someone is trying to kill us with a designer plague." The human response was swift and comprehensive. Not only did they contain Nixera's pathogen, they began reverse engineering it to identify its creators. Their analysis of the virus's genetic structure revealed information about Nixera's own biology, giving them crucial intelligence about their attackers. As the first day of operations concluded, Zektar found himself confronting an unprecedented situation. 5 of the galaxy's most dangerous assassins had attempted simultaneous strikes against primitive humans, and every single mission had failed. "Status report," he demanded during the emergency quantum conference. Target exhibited precognitive abilities, Kr Moth reported, his form still flickering from temporal instability. They had weapons specifically designed to harm phased entities. "Temporal countermeasures activated before I could complete historical alterations," Lysandra added. "They have technology that shouldn't exist for at least another millennium." "Natural psi resistance confirmed," the twins reported simultaneously. "Plus active detection of psychic intrusion. They've been trained for mental warfare." "Pathogen contained and analyzed," Nixera confirmed reluctantly. "They're reverse engineering my work to track biological signatures." Zektar processed this information with growing concern. In 3,000 years of operations, the Syndicate had never encountered a species capable of defending against all 5 assassination disciplines simultaneously. The humans shouldn't have possessed such capabilities, yet the evidence was incontrovertible. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence indicated a primitive civilization with crude technology." "The intelligence was accurate," Kr Moth replied. "Their general technology is primitive. But they've developed specific countermeasures for exactly the types of attacks we specialize in." "As if they've encountered dimensional assassins before," Lysandra observed. "Their defensive protocols are too sophisticated to be theoretical." Zektar studied the combat reports with growing unease. The humans had responded to each attack with practiced efficiency, implementing countermeasures that suggested extensive prior experience with similar threats. Yet galactic records contained no evidence of previous assassination attempts against Earth. "Revised assessment," he announced. "These humans are not the primitives we expected. They've been preparing for us." "Preparing how?" Nixera demanded. "They've barely achieved interstellar travel. Where could they have learned to fight enemies like us?" The question hung in the quantum foam between them, unanswered but deeply troubling. Somewhere in their evaluation of humanity, the Syndicate had missed something crucial. The Deathworlders weren't just adapted to their planet's hostile environment, they were adapted to threats the assassins couldn't yet comprehend. "What are our orders?" Kr Moth asked. Zektar hesitated. Standard protocol called for immediate withdrawal when facing unknown capabilities that could threaten operative safety. But the Syndicate had never failed to complete a contract. Their reputation depended on absolute success. "We continue the mission," he decided. But with revised parameters. Full intelligence gathering on human capabilities. No more assumptions about their limitations. "And if they prove too dangerous?" Lysandra inquired. Zektar's form flickered with uncertainty. "Then, we discover what happens when the galaxy's apex predators meet something they can't kill." None of them realized that decision had already been made for them. Deep in the asteroid belt, human sensors had detected the Syndicate's monitoring stations. Admiral Thompson was reviewing tactical reports that would have made the assassins' blood run cold, if they had possessed blood to cool. The hunters had become the hunted, but they didn't know it yet. Admiral Marcus Thompson stood before the holographic display in the Sol System Defense Command, his weathered face illuminated by the ghostly blue light of tactical projections. Around him, the most brilliant minds in human space had gathered for what would become known as the War Council of New Geneva.
Ladies and gentlemen, Thompson began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in humanity's first interstellar conflicts. We are no longer dealing with random assassination attempts. We're facing a coordinated campaign by professional killers using technology we barely understand. The hologram displayed the locations of each attack: Mars Orbital Station, Luna Base, the Asteroid Belt Command Center, Earth's Temporal Research Facility, and the Jupiter Science Colonies. Red indicators showed where the attacks had originated, revealing a pattern that chilled everyone present. Dr. Elizabeth Hawking leaned forward, her temporal analysis equipment still detecting residual chronological disturbances. The temporal attack was particularly sophisticated.
Someone tried to eliminate our top scientists by preventing their birth.
That level of precision requires knowledge of causality mechanics we're only beginning to theorize.
The biological weapon was even more concerning, Dr. Rivera added, from Luna Base via quantum communication.
This pathogen was engineered specifically to target human physiology. Whoever created it had access to detailed genetic information about our species. General Sarah Martinez, head of Special Operations, highlighted sections of the hologram showing the assassination attempts. The dimensional phasing technology is beyond our current understanding, but our countermeasures worked. The question is why we had countermeasures ready for threats we've never encountered. An uncomfortable silence filled the command center. The humans had developed their defensive capabilities through decades of careful preparation, but the origins of that preparation were classified at levels that required special authorization to discuss. Thompson made a decision that would change the course of the conflict.
Authorization Omega Black. Initiate Project Prometheus protocols.
The holographic display shifted, revealing information that had been hidden from all but the highest levels of human government. New data streams appeared, showing surveillance records, intercepted communications, and intelligence reports spanning 20 years. In 2157, our deep space monitoring stations detected artificial quantum signatures in the Tau Ceti system, Thompson explained. When we investigated, we found evidence of advanced assassination technology being used against the Centaurian colonies. The display showed recordings from humanity's first contact with the aftermath of professional galactic assassins. Entire colonies had been eliminated with surgical precision, leaders dead from impossible accidents, populations decimated by engineered plagues, historical records altered to erase inconvenient individuals from existence. We realized we were not alone in the galaxy, Dr. Hawking continued. But, more importantly, we realized we were surrounded by predators using technology that made our defenses obsolete. The humans had spent 2 decades preparing for a threat they hoped would never find them. Project Prometheus had been humanity's attempt to develop countermeasures for assassination techniques they couldn't fully comprehend. Every defense they had deployed against the syndicate had been tested and refined through careful analysis of alien attack patterns. The dimensional phase weapons, General Martinez explained, were developed after we found residual quantum traces at assassinated sites. Our scientists reverse-engineered the physics and built detection systems. The temporal anchors came from studying causality distortions around targets who had been retroactively eliminated, Dr. Hawking added. We learned to stabilize local timelines against historical manipulation. The psychic resistance training was implemented after we discovered evidence of mental manipulation in several political assassinations, Dr. Rivera noted. Every human in a critical position receives conditioning to resist mental intrusion. Thompson gestured, and the display showed the current tactical situation. Now these professional killers have come for us. They expected to find primitives with crude defenses. Instead, they encountered the only species in the galaxy that has spent decades specifically preparing to fight them. The assembled humans studied the data with grim satisfaction. Their 20-year preparation program had worked exactly as intended. But they all understood this was only the beginning. What's our next step? General Martinez asked. Thompson's expression hardened. We stop being the prey and become the predators. Across the Sol system, humanity began implementing the next phase of Project Prometheus. The defensive measures had bought them time and intelligence about their attackers. Now they would use that information to turn the tables on the galaxy's most feared assassins. The Syndicate, meanwhile, had established a temporary base on a rogue asteroid drifting through the outer system. Their quantum shields kept the facility hidden from human sensors while they analyzed their failures and planned their next moves.
The humans have technology they shouldn't possess, Zektar announced during another emergency council session.
Our standard approaches have been completely neutralized.
KR Matha's form was still unstable from his encounter with human plasma weapons. Their defensive protocols suggest extensive prior experience with dimensional attackers. Someone has taught them how to fight us.
The temporal countermeasures were particularly troubling, Lysandra added.
They activated too quickly to be improvised responses. Those systems were pre-positioned and ready for activation.
The Psion twins exchanged worried glances. The mental resistance isn't natural, Veltar observed.
It's trained. Deliberate conditioning against psychic manipulation. They've been preparing for us, Nixera concluded. The question is how they knew we were coming.
Zektar studied the intelligence reports they had gathered. Human technology was indeed primitive by galactic standards, but their defensive capabilities were surprisingly sophisticated in specific areas.
It was as if they had focused all their advanced research on countering exactly the types of attacks the Syndicate specialized in. New approach, he decided. We abandon stealth and precision strikes. Full assault on their primary population centers. Overwhelming force to break through their prepared defenses. That violates standard protocol, Karmoth pointed out. Massive casualties will attract attention from other galactic powers.
The humans have already made this personal, Zektar replied.
We finished the contract, whatever the cost.
The Syndicate began mobilizing resources for a direct assault on Earth. Battleships emerged from dimensional storage, their hulls bristling with weapons designed to crack planetary defenses. Automated hunter-killer drones were activated, programmed to seek and destroy any human presence they encountered. It was the largest military operation in the Syndicate's history, and it was about to encounter defenses that would shatter every assumption they held about human capabilities.
The attack began at 1400 hours Seoul Standard Time.
Syndicate vessels materialized throughout the inner system, their weapons charging for coordinated strikes on human military installations and population centers. They lasted exactly 17 minutes.
The humans had not been idle during their weeks of preparation.
Hidden weapon platforms emerged from asteroid camouflage, their guns already trained on predicted Syndicate approach vectors. Quantum mines detonated in precise patterns, creating dimensional disruption fields that trapped phased vessels in normal space.
Multiple hostiles detected, Admiral Thompson announced from his command center. Implementing Defense Protocol Alpha 7.
Earth's defensive grid activated with terrifying efficiency. Orbital battle stations that had been disguised as civilian habitats revealed their true nature, unleashing torrents of plasma and particle beam fire. The planet's artificial satellite network transformed into a coordinated weapons array, each platform linked to a targeting system that tracked enemy vessels across multiple dimensions. But the most shocking revelation came when the human fleet engaged the Syndicate forces directly. Ships that had appeared to be simple exploration vessels revealed hidden weapon systems and advanced defensive capabilities. More importantly, they were crewed by humans who fought with a tactical sophistication that left the assassins reeling. Captain Sarah Chen, commanding the vessel Indomitable, led a squadron of cruisers against a Syndicate battleship 3 times their size. Her tactical display showed enemy vessels phasing in and out of normal space, trying to avoid human weapons fire.
Target their quantum anchors, she ordered.
Force them into stable space where we can hit them. The human weapons had been specifically designed to counter dimensional manipulation. Quantum disruptor beams locked onto the Syndicate vessel's phase generators, forcing them to remain in normal space where conventional weapons could destroy them. Impossible, Karmoth transmitted as his flagship came under fire from multiple directions.
They're targeting our dimensional stabilizers with pinpoint accuracy. The humans had studied Syndicate technology for decades.
Every weakness, every design flaw, every operational limitation had been catalogued and exploited.
What should have been a massacre became a rout as human forces systematically dismantled their attackers.
Zektar watched in horror as his most advanced warships were destroyed by creatures that had barely mastered interstellar travel.
How are they doing this?
His answer came from an unexpected source.
Admiral Thompson's voice cut through their communication channels, transmitted on frequencies that should have been impossible for humans to access. Attention Syndicate forces. This is Admiral Marcus Thompson of the Seoul Defense Command. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why professional assassins have been disappearing in human space for the past 5 years. The transmission should have been impossible. Human technology couldn't penetrate Syndicate quantum encryption, yet Thompson's words reached them with crystal clarity. You think you're the first killers to hunt humanity? Thompson continued. You're not even the most dangerous. We've been dealing with your kind for decades. The difference is, we learned from every encounter. The holographic display on Thompson's command ship showed dozens of Syndicate vessels being systematically destroyed by human forces. But, more disturbing were the additional icons appearing throughout human space, the remains of previous assassination attempts. Every time one of you came for us, we studied your methods, Thompson explained. We reverse-engineered your technology. We learned your weaknesses. We've been preparing for this day since we first realized the galaxy was full of predators like you. Zektar's fleet was being annihilated. Ships that had terrorized civilizations for millennia were falling to human weapons with devastating efficiency. His most feared operatives were being hunted through dimensions they had once thought their private domain. Withdraw, he ordered. Full retreat to backup coordinates. But, the humans had anticipated even this. As Syndicate forces attempted to phase into emergency dimensional corridors, they found their escape routes blocked by quantum barriers. Human ships pursued them through multiple layers of reality, their weapons tracking targets across dimensions the assassins had thought were undetectable. There is no retreat, Thompson announced. You came to our home to commit genocide. Now you face the consequences. The Battle of Seoul lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the most feared assassination syndicate in galactic history had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing through deep space. Their legendary reputation lay in ruins, along with most of their fleet. Zektar managed to escape with 3 ships and a handful of operatives. As they limped toward the galactic rim, he tried to comprehend what had happened to his organization. How? Karmoth demanded, his form barely stable after multiple wounds. How did primitive Deathworlders destroy us? Zektar stared at the tactical displays showing the wreckage of his fleet. They weren't primitive. We were the primitives. They've been studying us for decades, learning our methods, preparing countermeasures. But, their technology, LYSS Andra began. Was designed specifically to kill us, Zektar finished. Every weapon, every defense, every tactic was developed with assassination specialists in mind. We walked into a trap 20 years in the making. The surviving members of the Council of Shadows sat in stunned silence as the full scope of their defeat became clear. The humans hadn't just survived their attack, they had been expecting it. Preparing for it. Waiting for the moment when the galaxy's apex predators would finally come calling. What now? Nixera asked. Zektar looked at the quantum communicator that would connect them to their employers. The mining consortium was expecting confirmation of human extinction. Instead, they would receive news that would echo throughout the galactic criminal underworld. Now, he said quietly, we send a message to every assassin, mercenary, and killer in the galaxy, never accept a contract involving humans. They don't just fight back. They hunt the hunters. The transmission that followed would become legend among the criminal classes. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Kethvar Syndicate declared a target untouchable. The most feared killers in the galaxy had met their match in creatures from a small blue world on the galactic rim. But, humanity's war with the assassins was far from over. The Syndicate's defeat would only attract more dangerous predators, drawn by the challenge of killing the unkillable prey. And, the humans were already preparing for them. The Nexus Prime Underworld Exchange had operated for over 4 millennia without interruption, its sprawling markets hidden within folded spacetime where criminals, mercenaries, and, worse, gathered to conduct business the galaxy's legitimate governments preferred to pretend didn't exist. Today, the usually chaotic hub of illicit activity had fallen into an unprecedented silence. The source of that silence sat in the center of the main trading floor, broadcast on every available screen and communication channel.
Zektar Voss, legendary prime executor of the Kefvar Syndicate, appeared as a broken figure slumped before a quantum transmitter. His dimensional phasing abilities flickered erratically, his form shifting between solid matter and translucent energy as he struggled to maintain corporeal stability. This is a galactic emergency broadcast to all mercenary guilds, assassination syndicates, and independent contractors, Zektar began, his voice carrying harmonics that betrayed deep physical and psychological trauma. The Kefvar Syndicate officially declares the species designated human from the Sol system to be an extinct-level threat. The assembled criminals listened with growing disbelief as the galaxy's most feared assassin continued his transmission. Many had witnessed the Syndicate's work firsthand, entire civilizations reduced to archaeological curiosities, political leaders eliminated so thoroughly that history itself forgot they had ever existed. Effective immediately, no contracts will be accepted against human targets under any circumstances, Zektar continued. Any organization attempting to operate against humanity will face immediate sanctions from the Underworld Council. This designation is permanent and non-negotiable. Vexandra the Slicer, a notorious information broker whose cybernetic implants could crack any security system, leaned forward in disbelief.
The Syndicate failed a contract?
Impossible, rumbled Gorthak the Destroyer, whose mercenary company had demolished entire star systems for the right price.
The Syndicate doesn't fail. They've never failed. But the evidence was undeniable.
The transmission continued to show tactical recordings from the Battle of Sol, holographic displays revealing the systematic destruction of Syndicate forces by what appeared to be a primitive human military. Ships that should have been invincible fell to weapons that shouldn't have been able to track them. The humans possess technology specifically designed to counter dimensional manipulation, temporal alteration, psychic intrusion, biological warfare, and quantum stealth, Zektar explained. They have been preparing for encounters with professional assassins for decades.
Any attempt to engage them results in immediate tactical superiority on their part. The Underworld's reaction was swift and predictable.
Panic spread through the criminal networks as organizations realized that their most reliable problem solver had been utterly defeated by creatures they had dismissed as backwater primitives.
Contracts were cancelled. Operations were suspended. For the first time in galactic history, the criminal underworld was genuinely afraid of a single species. But not all of the galaxy's predators were willing to accept the Syndicate's assessment.
In the private chambers of the Obsidian Collective, a gathering of beings that made the Syndicate look like petty thieves was considering the implications of humanity's sudden prominence. These were creatures that had transcended their original biology, becoming living weapons capable of destroying star systems with their thoughts alone. Lord Malphas, ancient beyond measure and, wrapped in shadows that consumed light itself, studied the tactical data from the Battle of Sol with cold interest. The Syndicate was always too dependent on technology, he observed, his voice echoing from dimensions where sound had different meanings. They forgot the fundamental truth of our trade. Lady Seraph, her crystalline form pulsing with energies that could rewrite the laws of physics, nodded in agreement.
Fear is the ultimate weapon.
The humans defeated the Syndicate's tools, but they have not yet faced true power. The collective represented evolution's end point for predatory species, beings that had abandoned physical limitations to become pure malevolent force. They had ended civilizations not through assassination or warfare, but by simply willing them out of existence.
The concept of technological countermeasures was meaningless against entities that operated outside the normal laws of reality. The Syndicate's failure presents an opportunity, Lord Malphas continued. The galaxy now believes these humans are untouchable. Eliminating them will restore the natural order and establish our superiority over lesser predators. The humans will not expect us, Lady Seraph added.
They have prepared for assassins and warriors. They have not prepared for gods.
The decision was unanimous.
The Obsidian Collective would succeed where the Syndicate had failed, demonstrating that some predators could not be prepared for or defeated through conventional means. They began their approach to the Sol system with confidence that bordered on arrogance. Meanwhile, in the depths of human space, Admiral Thompson was receiving intelligence reports that would have terrified most species into immediate surrender. Long-range sensors had detected massive dimensional disturbances approaching from the galactic core energy signatures that dwarfed anything in the known databases.
Analysis complete, Dr. Hawking reported during the emergency briefing. We're looking at entities that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Their energy output is equivalent to small stars. Whatever's coming isn't using technology, they are the weapon.
General Martinez studied the sensor data with the calculating gaze of someone who had spent decades preparing for the impossible.
The collective.
We've been monitoring their activities through deep space surveillance for 15 years.
Monitoring? Dr. Rivera asked. You knew about these things? Thompson nodded grimly. Project Prometheus didn't just prepare us for the Syndicate. We've been tracking every major threat in the galaxy since we achieved interstellar travel. The Obsidian Collective represents the worst-case scenario, entities that transcend conventional physical laws. The holographic display shifted to show classified files that revealed the true scope of humanity's preparation. Deep space monitoring stations hidden throughout the galaxy had been tracking the Collective's activities for decades. Every encounter, every demonstration of their power, every weakness or limitation had been catalogued and analyzed. They're not invincible, Dr. Hawking continued. Our analysis suggests they maintain coherence through quantum entanglement across multiple dimensions. Disrupt that entanglement, and they become vulnerable to conventional attack. Easier said than done, General Martinez observed. The technology required to interfere with transdimensional quantum states doesn't exist. Actually, Dr. Hawking replied with a smile that chilled everyone present, it does. We've been building it for 5 years. The revelation that humanity had developed weapons capable of affecting transdimensional entities sent shockwaves through the assembled military leadership. Project Prometheus had apparently been far more extensive than even classified briefings had indicated. The quantum nullification array, Thompson explained. Hidden in the asteroid belt, powered by 3 fusion reactors and equipped with targeting systems that can track entities across 17 dimensions. We've never tested it against live targets, but the theoretical models are promising. You built a weapon to kill gods, Dr. Rivera said quietly. Without knowing if it would work. We built it because we knew something like this would eventually come for us, Thompson replied. The galaxy is full of predators. Some use technology, some use biology, some transcend physical limitations entirely. We prepared for all of them. The approaching collective had no idea that their intended victims had spent years developing countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize transdimensional entities. The humans had studied every aspect of collective physiology, psychology, and operational methods through careful analysis of their previous encounters. Lord Malphas and Lady Seraph materialized in the outer Sol system as beings of pure malevolent energy, their forms shifting between dimensions as they approached Earth. They expected to find a primitive civilization cowering before powers they couldn't comprehend. Instead, they found Admiral Thompson's voice cutting through the quantum foam that surrounded their essences, transmitted on frequencies that reached directly into their transdimensional consciousness. Attention Obsidian Collective entities. This is Sol Defense Command. You have violated human territorial space and are ordered to withdraw immediately. The audacity of the transmission stunned both collective members. No mortal being had ever communicated with them directly, much less issued orders. The humans were apparently even more primitive than expected. Mortal creatures, Lady Seraph responded, her voice carrying harmonics that had driven entire species insane. You face beings beyond your comprehension. Surrender and your deaths will be merciful. Thompson's reply came without hesitation. Negative. You are designated hostile entities operating in violation of Sol System defense protocols. Final warning, withdraw or face defensive action. Lord Malphas began gathering energy for an attack that would sterilize Earth's biosphere. Your arrogance will be remembered as the final mistake of your species. The quantum energies he summoned should have been unstoppable by any conventional defense. They had previously cracked planets and extinguished stars. But, as he prepared to unleash destruction on the human homeworld, something unprecedented happened. The space around him began to destabilize. Quantum nullification array activated, Thompson announced. Target lock achieved on both entities. The sensation was impossible yet undeniable. Something was interfering with the collective's transdimensional coherence,
forcing them into progressively fewer dimensions until they approached normal spacetime. For beings that existed across multiple layers of reality, the experience was profoundly disorienting.
What is this? Lady Seraph demanded as her crystalline form began to solidify into conventional matter. Dimensional anchor technology, Dr. Hawking explained over the communication channel. We've been studying your operational methods for years.
You maintain existence across multiple dimensions through quantum entanglement.
We're simply severing those connections. The nullification array was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a weapon that could force transdimensional entities into normal space where they became vulnerable to conventional attack.
The theoretical breakthrough had come from studying collective encounters with other species, identifying the quantum signatures that allowed them to transcend physical limitations.
Lord Malphas found himself trapped in three-dimensional space for the first time in millennia.
His power, while still immense, was now constrained by the same physical laws that governed normal matter.
You cannot contain us indefinitely.
We don't need to contain you indefinitely, Thompson replied.
Just long enough.
The human fleet that emerged from concealment throughout the Sol system was unlike anything the collective had encountered. These weren't conventional warships but specialized hunter-killers designed specifically for transdimensional targets. Their weapons systems had been developed through decades of studying collective encounters, calibrated to affect entities forced into normal space.
Impossible, Lady Seraph transmitted as human vessels surrounded her position. No mortal species possesses such knowledge.
You're right, Thompson acknowledged.
No mortal species figured this out on their own. We had help.
The revelation that followed would echo through the galactic underworld for centuries. Humanity hadn't developed their defensive capabilities in isolation. They had been guided by something even the Obsidian Collective didn't know existed, entities that had transcended physical reality so completely they existed beyond the collective's perception.
Who are you speaking for?
Lord Malphas demanded, his energy form fluctuating as human weapons began targeting his quantum matrix. Thompson's answer carried implications that chilled beings capable of destroying star systems.
The predecessors. The ones who came before even your kind.
They've been watching the galaxy's development for eons, waiting for a species capable of maintaining balance between order and chaos.
The predecessors had been legend even among transdimensional entities, being so advanced they existed outside the normal framework of reality entirely.
If they had chosen humanity as their agents in the galaxy, it explained how a primitive species had developed countermeasures for every type of predator imaginable. This isn't possible, Lady Seraph protested as human weapons began disrupting her crystalline matrix.
The predecessors vanished billions of years ago.
They evolved beyond the need for physical existence, Thompson explained.
But, they still maintain interest in preventing any single species from dominating the galaxy through violence. Congratulations, you've attracted their attention. The Battle of Sol's second phase was even more decisive than the first.
Collective entities that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years found themselves systematically dismantled by weapons they hadn't known could exist.
Their transdimensional advantages were neutralized, their energy forms disrupted, their consciousness forced into containment fields designed specifically for their physiology.
When the engagement ended, the most powerful predators in galactic history had been captured alive, a fate they had never imagined possible.
What happens now? Lord Malphas asked from his containment cell, his form reduced to conventional matter for the first time since his species had transcended biology. Thompson studied the imprisoned entities through layers of quantum shielding. Now you serve as proof that humanity is under protection that transcends normal galactic politics. Your defeat will ensure no other predators attempt to claim our territory.
The news of the collective's capture spread through the underworld even faster than the Syndicate's defeat. Two of the galaxy's most feared predator organizations had been eliminated by a species that had achieved interstellar travel barely 2 centuries ago.
The implications were staggering.
In criminal dens throughout the galaxy, new rules were established.
Human space was declared absolutely off-limits to all illegal activities. No contracts would be accepted against human targets. No operations would be conducted in their territory. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had become the galaxy's most feared force. But, the humans weren't finished demonstrating their capabilities.
As word of their victories spread, other predator species began considering challenges to their dominance. Each would learn why the galaxy's most dangerous killers now refused to hunt in human space.
The age of humanity as prey had ended. The age of humanity as apex predator was just beginning.
6 months after the defeat of the Obsidian Collective, the Galactic Underworld Council convened for the first time in 3 centuries. The massive space station that served as neutral ground for the galaxy's criminal organizations drifted in the void between spiral arms, its artificial gravity wells and temporal shields providing sanctuary for beings that most civilizations would exterminate on sight. But today's gathering was unlike any in the Council's long history. For the first time, representatives weren't here to negotiate territories or settle disputes between rival organizations. They were here to address a threat that had fundamentally altered the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Vexandra the Slicer activated her holographic display, showing intelligence reports that had been flooding the underworld's information networks for months. 17 major criminal organizations have attempted operations in or around human space, she announced to the assembled predators.
All 17 have been completely eliminated. The council chamber fell silent except for the subtle harmonics of various species' breathing apparatus.
Around the circular table, beings that had terrorized civilizations for millennia studied the tactical reports with growing unease. The Void Reapers sent a fleet of 30 ships to raid human mining colonies, Vexandra continued. Human forces detected them while they were still in hyperspace and destroyed the entire fleet before it could exit into normal spacetime.
The holographic display showed wreckage patterns that defied conventional understanding of space combat.
Ships that had been moving faster than light had somehow been intercepted and annihilated by weapons that shouldn't have been able to track hyperspace signatures. The genetic purifiers attempted biological warfare against human colonies in the Centauri sector, Vexandra continued. The humans not only neutralized their engineered plagues but reverse-engineered them to target purifier physiology specifically. The entire organization died from their own weapons within 72 hours. Gorthak the Destroyer shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced chair. His mercenary company had been considering a contract against human shipping lanes, but these reports were forcing him to reconsider.
What about the Temporal Assassins Guild? They tried to eliminate human leaders through timeline manipulation.
Complete failure, Vexandra replied.
The humans have established temporal anchor networks throughout their territory. Any attempt to alter their history triggers immediate countermeasures.
3 separate assassination teams were trapped in causality loops and had to be rescued by guild emergency protocols.
The reports continued in similar fashion.
Every type of predator organization that had attempted to operate against humanity had met with swift and total defeat. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were systematically eliminating threats with an efficiency that surpassed even the legendary Syndicate's capabilities. How is this possible? Demanded Sekton the Corruptor, whose organization specialized in turning species against themselves through psychological manipulation. No single civilization possesses countermeasures for every form of attack.
The humans do, Vexandra replied simply. Our intelligence networks have been monitoring their activities since the collective incident.
They have prepared for every type of threat our organizations represent. The holographic display shifted to show classified intelligence about human capabilities that should have been impossible for any criminal organization to obtain. Deep space monitoring networks, advanced weapon systems, defensive installations that operated on physical principles most species hadn't even theorized.
They're not just defending, observed Mectran the Harvester, whose cybernetic implants interface directly with the holographic data streams. They're actively hunting our operations throughout the galaxy. The evidence was undeniable.
Human intelligence operatives had infiltrated criminal networks on dozens of worlds, gathering information about planned operations and eliminating threats before they could be implemented. More disturbing, they seemed to possess detailed knowledge about criminal organization structures, operational methods, and leadership hierarchies.
They know everything about us, Vexandra confirmed. Communication intercepts, financial records, personnel files, operational protocols. Every major criminal organization in the galaxy has been thoroughly penetrated by human intelligence networks.
The implications sent ripples of fear through beings that had never experienced genuine threat before. If the humans possessed comprehensive intelligence about criminal activities throughout the galaxy, no organization was safe from their retaliation.
Recommendations? Gorthak asked, his voice carrying the uncertainty of a predator that had suddenly become prey. Complete cessation of all activities in human space, Vexandra replied without hesitation. Furthermore, we recommend establishing formal non-aggression protocols with human authorities. They have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our ability to counter. The suggestion was unprecedented. Criminal organizations didn't negotiate with legitimate governments, they operated in shadows, avoiding direct confrontation through stealth and misdirection. But the humans had proven capable of detecting and defeating even the most sophisticated stealth operations. You're suggesting we surrender? Sekton demanded. We bow to primitives from a backwater world? I'm suggesting we acknowledge reality, Vexandra replied. The humans are no longer primitives. Based on our intelligence analysis, they represent the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Continuing to oppose them will result in the extinction of our organizations. The debate that followed revealed the deep schism developing within the galactic underworld. Older organizations, those that had survived for millennia through careful risk assessment, were inclined to accept humanity's dominance and adjust their operations accordingly. Younger groups, particularly those that had built their reputations on eliminating seemingly impossible targets, viewed humanity's victories as challenges to be overcome rather than warnings to be heeded. The meeting was interrupted by an emergency transmission from the outer perimeter. Human ships had appeared throughout the space around the Council station, their stealth capabilities allowing them to approach undetected until they chose to reveal themselves. Admiral Thompson's face appeared on every display screen in the chamber, his expression carrying the calm confidence of someone holding absolute tactical advantage. Greetings, Galactic Underworld Council. I am Admiral Marcus Thompson, representing the Sol Defense Command and associated human territories. The assembled criminals stared at the transmission in shock. The Council's location was one of the most closely guarded secrets in the galaxy, protected by stealth technologies that made detection impossible. Yet somehow human forces had not only found them but surrounded them without triggering any alarms. You are no doubt wondering how we located your facility, Thompson continued. The answer is simple. We've been monitoring your organization for decades. Every communication, every meeting, every operational decision has been observed and catalogued. The holographic display around Thompson showed detailed intelligence about every organization represented at the Council. Financial records, personnel files, operational histories, information that should have been impossible for any legitimate government to obtain. We're here to propose a new arrangement, Thompson announced. Effective immediately, all criminal organizations will cease operations in human space and territories under human protection. In exchange, we will not pursue retroactive justice for past activities. And, if we refuse? Gorthak demanded, his mercenary instincts engaging despite the tactical impossibility of his situation. Thompson's expression didn't change. Then, you will discover why the Syndicate and the Collective are no longer operational threats. Your organizations exist at our discretion. We can eliminate any or all of you whenever we choose. The threat was delivered with matter-of-fact certainty rather than dramatic posturing. Thompson spoke like someone stating basic physical laws rather than making ultimatums. What guarantee do we have that you won't simply eliminate us anyway? Vexandra asked. None whatsoever, Thompson replied. Your survival depends on your compliance with our requirements. Criminal organizations that operate within acceptable parameters will be tolerated. Those that exceed our limits will be eliminated. The parameters Thompson outlined were unlike anything the criminal underworld had ever encountered. No operations against civilian populations. No extinction-level weapons. No dimensional or temporal manipulation that could affect innocent species. No interference with legitimate government activities on protected worlds. Most shocking of all, the humans were offering to enforce these restrictions throughout the galaxy rather than just in their own territory. You're proposing to police the entire galaxy? Sekton asked incredulously. We're proposing to maintain balance, Thompson corrected.
Criminal organizations serve useful functions, they handle problems legitimate governments can't address, provide services that societies need but can't officially sanction, and maintain competitive pressure that prevents governmental complacency. But they cannot be allowed to threaten the survival of entire species or civilizations. The humans had apparently studied criminal organizations with the same analytical precision they had applied to assassination syndicates and transdimensional entities. They understood the ecosystem role that illegal activities played in galactic society and had no intention of eliminating crime entirely.
What happens to organizations that refuse these parameters? Mectran asked. Thompson's response carried the weight of absolute certainty. They joined the syndicate and the collective as historical footnotes. The council vote was swift and unanimous. Every criminal organization agreed to operate within human-defined parameters rather than face the systematic elimination that had befallen their predecessors. But the humans weren't finished reshaping the galactic underworld. One final matter, Thompson announced. We're establishing a new organization to coordinate criminal activities and ensure compliance with galactic stability requirements. It will be led by former syndicate operatives under human supervision. The holographic display showed Zektar Voss, his form now stable but bearing obvious signs of his defeat at human hands. Behind him stood the other surviving members of the Council of Shadows, their legendary status reduced to that of middle management in humanity's criminal hierarchy. The reformed syndicate will handle operations too sensitive for legitimate organizations while maintaining the ethical guidelines we've established, Thompson explained. They have intimate knowledge of criminal methodologies and can ensure compliance more effectively than external oversight. The irony was profound.
The galaxy's most feared assassins had been transformed into humanity's enforcement arm within the criminal underworld, their expertise redirected toward maintaining order rather than creating chaos. Any organizations that attempt to operate outside these parameters will be dealt with by the reformed syndicate under human authority, Thompson concluded.
I trust this arrangement will prove beneficial to all parties. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence.
In the space of an hour, they had witnessed the complete restructuring of galactic criminal hierarchies. Humanity had not only defeated the most dangerous predator organizations but had conscripted them into a new order that served human interests.
What have we become? Gorthak asked quietly.
Civilized, Vexandra replied. For the first time in galactic history, criminal organizations will operate according to ethical guidelines enforced by beings capable of eliminating us if we transgress. The humans had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had tamed the underworld without destroying it, channeling criminal capabilities toward constructive rather than destructive purposes. As the council members departed to inform their organizations of the new order, each carried the understanding that they had witnessed a fundamental shift in galactic power structures. The age of unrestrained criminal predation had ended, replaced by a system where illegal activities served the greater good rather than pure self-interest.
In human space, Admiral Thompson reviewed the reports from his intelligence operatives throughout the galaxy.
Criminal organizations were already beginning to adapt to their new guidelines, redirecting their capabilities toward targets that threatened galactic stability rather than pursuing purely profitable ventures.
Phase 3 of Project Prometheus is complete, he announced to the assembled command staff. The galaxy's predator organizations have been neutralized or conscripted. We can now begin Phase 4.
Dr. Hawking looked up from her temporal analysis equipment. What's Phase 4? Thompson's expression carried the quiet satisfaction of someone who had spent decades preparing for challenges most species couldn't imagine. We prepare for the real threats. The ones that exist outside our galaxy. The holographic display activated, showing deep space sensor readings that detected massive energy signatures approaching from the void between galaxies. Entities that made the Obsidian Collective look like primitive scavengers were stirring in the darkness, drawn by the unusual activities in what they had considered an insignificant spiral arm. The intergalactic predators will come eventually, Thompson continued. When they do, we'll need every criminal organization, every mercenary company, and every reformed assassin working together to defend our reality.
The humans had spent decades preparing for threats within their own galaxy.
Now they would begin preparing for threats from beyond it, using the criminal networks they had tamed as intelligence gathering and rapid response forces against dangers that legitimate governments couldn't comprehend. As word of the New Order spread through the galactic underworld, former enemies found themselves working together under human supervision. The Syndicate's reformed operatives coordinated with mercenary companies to eliminate rogue organizations that refused to accept the new parameters. Information brokers shared intelligence with legitimate government agencies to prevent extinction-level threats. For the first time in galactic history, the forces of chaos were working to preserve order. And, in the depths of space, Admiral Thompson's sensors continued to monitor the approaches from the void between galaxies, preparing humanity and their new allies for challenges that would make previous threats seem trivial by comparison. The galaxy's apex predators had learned to serve a higher purpose. Now they would discover if that purpose was strong enough to defend against the things that hunted between the stars. When Deathworlders appear, even top-tier assassins retreat. HFY